Welcome back and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. Not sure if you're a wine drinker or not, but consider this. Have you built up enough trust in a brand so that if they asked you to give them some money, then would you trust them enough to design a custom solution to fit you based on how well you knew them as a customer? After all, how well do you think they know you and the problem that you're trying to solve? There's a lot of examples out there in the subscription box service today, but there is even a lot more to learn from the wine industry, especially the brokerage side of the house. It's a great story of a niche market, a creative solution, and a few tales of really knowing your customers' tastes, if not your own. Jeremy Ringel is a managing partner at GRW Wines, and he's worked with wine collectors brokering high-end wines for over 30 years. And on this episode, we'll discuss high-end wines, sommeliers, solving a niche-based problem, logistics, paid advertising and social media, monks dividing up lands, the fruity bombs of Napa Valley, the Burgundy region, as well as Ron Burgundy, Chateau Lafite and some Screaming Eagles, sour grapes, and a lot more. So let's tune in to a very knowledgeable wine collector with a shark who will never stop whining about making your business and marketing better on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. If you would, tell us a little bit about your background and your career to date.
I've always been a food guy. I grew up thinking that I was going to be in the food business my whole life because really I wake up, think about what I'm going to have for lunch, think about what I'm going to have for dinner, and food was always at the top of my priority. And so I thought I'd get into the restaurant business. And sure enough, I did that. I went to the business school at the University of Michigan. All my friends went to Wall Street and made a ton of money, and I was working for 35 grand at a restaurant. And in doing so, I fell in love with wine. I was able to meet some guys who were in wine groups in Chicago and really kind of took me under their wing and showed me what wine was all about, how to invest in wine, how to collect wine. And then certainly, taking over the wine program at a restaurant, I was able to do a lot with wine. And that got me into the idea of investing and collecting in wine. And later on in my life, probably about 5 years after being in the restaurant business, I saw a niche to get into the wine industry and actually sell investment wine, so bottles that would be classified as $150 and up, but more so to the people who actually really like to drink expensive wine and collect expensive wine. There's a niche out there, and I got into that into the end of 2007, and I've been doing it ever since.
Well, does watching the Wolverines play sports, whether basketball or football, is that something that causes you to drink? Because they have not been good in a very long time.
So it's good that you asked that because we actually won the football championship in 1997 when I was there. That was the year that Brian Greasy took us to the national championship. And since then, I've been on the wagon because we've been shitty ever since.
Right. Well, explain a little bit further how you carve out this kind of niche in the wine business and what it is. Why would somebody want to get these kind of wines from somebody like you as opposed to maybe getting them from a higher end liquor store? What's really sort of the cutoff of level of bottle of wine that somebody needs to understand where you come in?
Well, the traditionally, and this is still in existence today, the most notable place that people buy wine is that mom and pop wine store that's been around for 15 to 30 years, or it is the big Bevmo, Total Wine and More, the Costco's of the world, where they can actually buy in bulk and they have collectible wine, but they also focus on the wines that are less expensive. When I got into the business, the niche that I saw out there was that all the pricing was way too high over market. Everybody was buying wine from these mom and pop stores that are working on 35 to 40% margins, but the prices were terrible. And the actual market price was evident in wine auctions. So for someone like me who is watching the wine auctions where you have a real market price, it's the whole world all bidding in the same auction and you know what the wine's selling for, and then you look online and the cheapest bottle you can find of a similar category is going to be 20 or 30% more than market. So I figured that there's got to be thousands of people globally who are searching for these wines and they're not able to find them. And what are these people looking for? Obviously, the best price, but they're also looking for somebody who knows these wines, who can actually source the wines, and then also can recommend the wines. And there was no one doing that. And I thought that that was a niche that would really be almost like a stock trader of wine, but also somebody who drinks what they sell, is very, very intuitive about the wine industry itself, and it would be a partnership. People looking for the best price, but also looking for the best quality.
So you described it as thousands of people all over the world looking for these kinds of wine. Elaborate, if you will, a little bit further on what that audience actually looks like. Is it a restaurant owner who's too busy to necessarily search for wines? Is it a collector who's looking for a different marketplace and not wanting to go to the mom and pop shops or something like that? Define that audience a little bit better.
So the personality type of the wine collector, and for there's also going to be people who buy who are in the trade, which means that these are people who are reselling to the end user, the drinker. But I really think it's more important to focus on who that end user is. Who is the drinker or the buyer of these wines that's willing to spend this kind of money? And I would say that personality type, these are very, very type A individuals, people that have made a lot of money, very high net worth, talking about, average income of at least a half a million a year or more. And most of these people have the collector's mentality that they probably had when they were children, collecting baseball cards, collecting stamps. So a lot of these people you'll find have the same personality type where they collect nice cars, they collect even beyond wine, they collect other things. Anything that's a collectible and that has value, whether it's guns or collecting antiques. So a lot of people have a similar mentality where they just want to have a portfolio of tangible assets that's not just the stock market and not just real estate. And it's also more fun than owning real estate or owning
Oh,
stocks.
yeah, yeah. This business is also very lucrative. I mean, talk about the kind of money that people can make just in running this kind of business.
Well, the interesting thing about running a wine business is that if you were to ask people who are in the wine business what kind of sales you can generate from a wine shop versus what kind of sales you can generate from doing what we do, it's totally two different worlds. The world of owning a wine shop, and we buy and sell with relationships with wine shops. The typical wine store that you might see in your town that has um, selling liquor and then also selling wine and high end wine might be doing between 2 million and 6 million a year in sales. 6 million would be a very, very big number, and in order to do so, they have management who, when you walk in the store, they have to walk you around, sell you a bottle, understand what the clients want that are walking in, and that type of store has a very different type of overhead than we have. So if you set yourself up to where you're going to be a walk-in store with wine on the shelf, you need to have management there at all times taking care of your customers. What we do, and there's a niche of about, I'd say, a few hundred companies that do what we do. We have an off-site license where we are only selling to people who are not walking into our business, but people who are ordering, and we are shipping out. So in doing this kind of business, you're really separating yourself from a local store that might be able to do 2 million to 5 million, based on it's going to be walk-in business and it's going to be local. What we are doing is actually selling to the entire world. We ship to Hong Kong. We ship this to all the major metropolitan cities in the United States. We ship to the UK, Taiwan, and really any country that, if they're willing to get the wine over the border, we'll ship there. So it opens up the doors to do 4 to 5 times what a local store might do in revenues, and obviously that becomes more lucrative.
Well, and then really you become sort of the person that knows how to fix a problem as well, getting the bottle to the person overseas. This is a highly regulated industry. You can't just ship everything everywhere. But most people don't know automatically when it's right or wrong to ship to certain parts of the world.
That's
Is that
right.
correct?
That's right. And
There's a logistics component of it that's a lot
that's
more
right.
than just the wine business.
One thing that I found out over the years of being in the business and dealing with the big distribution companies like Southern Wine and Spirits and Republic, these these companies, Southern Wine and Spirits is one of the largest privately held companies in the world, and their monopoly over certain cities and states and the way that they operate, they are heavily funded. There are lobbyists that work within the government that are basically sponsored by Southern Wine and Spirits. They do not want you to be selling vintage wine into their states because it's going to be a conflict of interest with them selling their newly released vintages. So the irony is that the distributors, like you said, they don't want you in their state. They don't want anybody who's selling wine from where we are in California to be shipping wine into other states and satisfying the need for these clients to be buying wine. But ironically, Southern Wine and Spirits doesn't carry the stuff that we sell. They only carry the newly released vintages of wines that we are selling 20-year-old versions of. So the name of the game here is, how do we market ourselves to the community of people that aren't looking for the new wines that are being released, but the people who are actually looking for wines that have bottle age, they're ready to drink, the ones that are more of a trophy bottle because they're rare, nobody would have a 30-year-old version of that wine. And so I think that we're talking about two totally different industries, but they collide with respect to the way that the distribution companies want to have a monopoly over the end user.
Well, you mentioned earlier that there were only a couple of 100 competitors per se. How do you really sort of build out and market yourself in this niche to where you become the known go-to person with this audience of thousands all over the world that are interested in buying your product? Because even if there are hundreds, that's still a fair amount of competition. But marketing that niche for whatever it is you do different or better or become the respected, trusted leader, what is it that you do to get yourself in that position?
Well, I think there's probably three things that I've always preached to anybody that comes to work for me, and especially the sales team, to get an idea of what are the standards of GRW Wine Collection, which is my company. The first thing is you have to have the price. The price has to work for your clientele. If you have a great price, then you're immediately going to attract customers. And not only can you attract customers who are end users, but you can attract other people who are in the trade who don't have access to what you have, and they're going to buy it from me and then sell it to their end user just because of the fact that they can't access it. So you have to have the price, then you have to have the access. To be able to find and source the wines that we have, it's very, very difficult. The amount of wine communities and people that I know through the relationships and referrals, it's very extensive. So it allows me to go into the wine collections of the greatest drinkers of the world and buy wines out of their wine cellars and then trade them to people who actually want to drink them. And in order to do that, you need to be out there in the community drinking wine with people, flying to different wine tastings, and making a name for yourself within the wine community, not just as somebody who buys and sells, but somebody who actually loves what they do, enjoys being a part of the community, and has built trust. And then the final thing, which I think that is something most people may not think of, is you have to have the logistics to perfection. When people buy wine in the summertime, it's going to cook if it's going to be shipped
Mm-hmm.
in something that's not refrigerated. So you have to have the right styrofoam boxes. We even put ice packs into our boxes that we send out in the summertime to give people a chance to buy wine during the summer. When we ship wine to Hong Kong, I don't know if you've ever been there, but there's no such thing as winter there. It's
Oh,
always
sure.
hot,
It's always hot.
and it's humid, it's hot, and we have a protective layer which is similar to almost like a sheet metal wrap that we put around the boxes, and it insulates the wine about 10 degrees less than what it would be if it was exposed to the sun. So when we ship wine to these people who are in Hong Kong, who a lot of them have never even met me, but they trust me because when they see the box get delivered, they see the packaging, and they understand that the way that we actually monitor and manage the logistics, nobody does it like us. So you get a real competitive advantage but it's also because they trust you after they see how you ship the wine.
So if you establish that from a marketing standpoint, this is obviously heavily relationship based. This is how you and I even got introduced through another fellow wine drinker. But how much of the digital component do you look at, whether it's looking at social media, overdoing some amazing blog content work on your website, leveraging influencers? Where does that even play into what you're doing from your level of wine distribution as opposed to being somebody that actually bottles the wine itself?
I think it's going to be something that will play a huge role moving forward into the future because of the different generational gaps of people who are buying wine. When I got into the business, I would say that the majority of clients that I was dealing with were over 40 years old. The average age might be 50 years old, and these are guys that were using fax machines at the time, and using their cell phones was a new thing, and texting. And now these same people who are going to be in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, 10 years later after doing this, are people that are savvy, and they want to be able to be on their cell phones and have a mobile app to be able to buy wine and do things at a rapid click of a button. And I think that the generational gap is going to allow for what you're talking about to become a very lucrative business. And even though the wine industry is such a niche industry, so I don't think that a lot of marketing companies will end up making a lot of money off of wine businesses that want to utilize social media or different types of technology. I do believe that there's going to be a space for that for a company like mine, because there's only so many hours in the day that I can talk to somebody about wine. And if we have 3,000 clients and everybody wants a piece of you, how are you going to give them what they want without taking advantage of technology? And in terms of people who are able to refer business to you, we haven't been super successful going out there and doing website optimization on Google ad search and Yahoo searches. Maybe that's something that can change, but it hasn't been successful for us to where the amount of money that you put into it has generated the results. With that being said, I'm 100% willing to spend the money if there's the right avenue and the right person that can put it together. I just don't have that expertise.
Well, the average price of wine is roughly $10 a bottle, and I know the prices have gone up a little bit. But are you at all worried about where the digital marketplace will expand? You think of the Costco's having such an influence and how much wine they sell, how much wine is sold at liquor stores, and how much wine is sold at grocery markets as that expands. Is there a narrowing of the market because of that digital component as it moves forward in digital marketplaces? Or is it continuing to be niched regardless of the age of the buyer? I mean, is the high end collector necessarily looking for an Amazon to buy his wine even when it's expensive wine? Or do you still see the same level of expectation that they have with where they go to someone like you to purchase that kind of wine?
I think that the buyer who is looking to buy a bottle that's $10, and let's just use a range, is that somebody might be buying $5 bottles, $10 bottles, or $15 bottles on an average basis that they put in their house, and they're drinking those on a regular basis. Then you take that same buyer, and if they want to splurge, these are people that I know, my friends that just aren't into wine. Most of them are, into bourbon or they're into vodka. But when they buy wine and they want to buy something extraordinary, they'll ask me for a $40 or $50 bottle that I recommend.
Mm-hmm.
So that demographic is a totally different demographic than what I deal with. Any of the people that are drinking in that $100 range and up, these are people that are have probably been to Napa or been to a vineyard
Sure,
before.
sure.
These are people who have I would bet that they go to fine dining restaurants all the time, and it's a socially habitual thing for them, and they're eating at Michelin star restaurants. And so the food and wine component of their life is not something that is
It's not something that comes in
is
a
done at
carafe at
their
Olive Garden.
right, and it's not something that is enjoyed in the proximity of their own home. It's something that they actually go out there and seek. People who seek to travel, seek to dine, and seek to go to wineries and seek to drink expensive wine. This is a lifestyle thing, and so I don't think that the $10 bottle concept is something that will ever be something that will affect my business. But um, I do think that when it comes to distributors buying out other companies that have successful brands in that price range, I think that's going to be something that's going to be similar to Facebook buying any company that gets in their way. And so that I think is going to be something that will happen, and all of the big distribution companies will find any brand that becomes a hit in any region or any state, and they will buy that out and put it into their portfolio for sure because it makes sense.
Well, you articulated your answer better than I articulated my question. I think the thing that I'm thinking about is not necessarily whether or not the buyers will necessarily change, but whether or not somebody sees an opportunity out there to create some sort of digital marketplace. It's kind of like when Amazon sticks its toe in every amount of water. They could, for example, decide that they want to go after this kind of business, for example, and then maybe someone sets up some sort of e-commerce type channel that supplants what it is that people that have those kind of relationships go after. So it's always sort of thinking about how do you keep moving ahead to keep up with digital and create an environment where maybe the younger generation, for example, wants to purchase it through a channel without necessarily calling you or finding out from you.
Yeah, I have friends that have worked in wine stores, and I asked them how, the people that are walking around, the average buyer, what are they looking for when they see 30 shelves with 1,000 bottles of wine? How do they choose? And what's worked for the wine stores is putting stickers that show the critics' ratings, so that when someone
Yes.
says for 12.99, I'm going to get a 93-point Wine Spectator wine. Well, there could be six critics, of which maybe two of them don't really have any value to
Sure.
anybody but the person who's shopping. If you just put that sticker with a price point and a score that seems to somebody like, well, this got 93 points, it's $13. This sounds like a good deal. That's what's going on right now, but it's a very visual experience. And so when you look at someone like my wife, who had never really shopped online, she'd always be the person that wants to go to the store to touch and feel the clothes or whatever she's buying. She has not stepped into a mall or store in probably a year. So for someone like my wife to change, I think that the wine buyer who's willing to go out there and buy a $10 to $40, $50 bottle, they will have to have a new set of of criteria for how they're going to buy. And I think that you're right. I think that the people that get it right online, connecting to the millions and millions of people that do want to be marketed to without having to walk into a wine store, the world's going to change for that. So again, it goes back to who has the most power for logistics, and then the buying power to be able to have the best price, and then to be able to deliver on the marketing end of things, to connect with somebody who wants to say yes to every time they get a deal thrown at them. They'll make a ton of money. I that whole game is not something that excites me at all, because I want to sell the world's greatest wines, and I want to go on a journey with the people that want to search out the greatest wines in the world. So if with my background, I
Such a
probably could
great
make
point.
good money doing what these people are doing. But if I woke up every morning and tried to figure out how to connect with a million people that want to buy a $15 bottle of wine, that just wouldn't do it for me.
Such a great point. So, again, I kind of want to go back to the marketing, your brand and GRW's brand, but how do you continue to evolve to stay the go to source? There's a lot of noise. That you said there were a couple of hundred people that are competing against you in this space, but how do you sort of keep ahead of the game? I'm sure you're acquiring new customers all the time. It's not, you're
You know,
just
you
not
know what
living off the same ones forever.
I'd like to think that the direction that we've chosen to go has a competitive edge and a competitive advantage over everybody else. And that is, we drink what we sell. And if you were to take the 200 competitors of ours and you look at the incomes of the people that work for the companies, and then you look at the people that own the companies, very, very few of them actually drink these expensive wines that they're selling. And we do. And I make that investment in my employees, the sales team. I go out there and I make that investment in myself, and we're drinking the bottles that we sell. Maybe I'm not drinking a $10,000 bottle, but I'm drinking a $1,000 bottle and doing it often enough, and then tasting with my sales team to where when they're talking to people, you have a sense that these people really know what they're talking about. And not only do they know what they're talking about, they're probably selling the wine that they recommend because they've drank it, and not the other way around. Too many of these people that we deal with, you get a great deal, and even though the wine sucks, the deal is so good that you know you can make money on it, so you're going to go out there and you're going to pass it off to all your clients. We don't do that. We take our inventory of what we sell, and the good majority of it are wines that have very, very high scores from the critics, and also wines that we really would recommend, and the brands that we think are the best winemakers of the world who are making these wines. So we drink what we sell, and I can't preach that anymore, and I just don't think anyone else is doing it.
You just said something that also triggered a question. How do you recognize to you, and for you to put your stamp of approval behind it, what is a great bottle of wine that you can sell to your customers? And the reason I ask that is somebody comes and recommends one to you. It would be very easy to lean on, here's what the critics say. The reviews are in, or it's a $200 bottle of wine, so it must be twice as good as a $100 bottle of wine. I'm being facetious, but when you start cultivating what's really a good bottle of wine, how do you differentiate that and be able to put your stamp of approval on it to your customers?
Well, if let's say that you were a novice and you drank a $50 bottle of wine, and you knew based on the fact that you've had glass pours at restaurants for your whole life that you were drinking something special, and then someone gave you a $200 bottle of wine right after you had the $50 bottle, and you said, "Oh my God, that $50 bottle kind of sucks compared to this one." And then you get the $1,000 bottle and you compare that to the $200 bottle. It doesn't always work like that with the quality of the wine being correlated to the price. So without me sounding as though I know what everybody should be drinking, I know what everybody's tastes are. I know what if somebody likes Napa Cab, that these are the five ones that they're gonna like. It doesn't work like that. You have to find out exactly what that person likes
Great
and
point.
what they drink. And then basically what I like to do is say, will you trust me with sending you a full case of wine of 12 different bottles that are all going to be things that are up your alley of the way that you describe what you like to drink. And then they go through each bottle and they talk about what they like and what they didn't like. And if there's something that blew them away, it sends me down a path of, okay, they might like these five producers and they like these vintages. And you really need to take each person's tastes and then start them on a journey. I drink Burgundy. That's Pinot Noir if it's red, and it's Chardonnay if it's white, all from the region of Burgundy in France. That's what I love to drink. There's people that don't like Burgundy because they like these massive fruit bombs of Napa Cabernet, and it just does it for them. Nothing else does it for them but gigantic velvety fruit. And these are high alcohol wines, and that's what does it for them. So I'm not going to tell this person to drink Burgundy if I know I'm going to take them down a journey to get to a place where they're going to drink the greatest Napa Cab. I think the goal here is figure out what somebody likes and take them to the promised land as long as they can afford it, to raise the bar on every single wine from the region that they like to drink. And then over time, some people will gravitate towards what I want to get them into because I'm recommending stuff, or some people will be at a party or someone's friend's house and they'll have their first taste of Bordeaux or their first taste of a Rhone wine or a Burgundy, and they call me up and they say, "Oh man, I just tasted this wine. Can you get me some?" And then that sends a message where I need to go. I need to take them down a new path.
How do you keep up with just the abundance of different wines in your sort of memory to keep up with that? Because for every one made from any particular distributor, they're going to have certain years of vintage. And then after that, they don't always taste the same. So, how do you keep up with all of the inventory that you market and know the differentiation in order to be able to satisfy the individual unique taste buds of each of your customers? Because you're having to take on a whole new inventory with each year's vintage for everybody that you work with and you market.
Right. Well, that's it's a loaded question, and let's start with this. In Burgundy and in Bordeaux, all of that land is spoken for.
Well, that's true.
These are way back when the monks assigned what was going to be Grand Cru versus Premier Cru. Grand Cru being the best of the best property. Then there's Premier Cru, and then there's Village. And in Bordeaux, there's first growth, second growth, third growth. Everything is on a class system, and everything has been owned for hundreds and hundreds of years. So these brands that are owned outright, they don't really change. So it's not as though there's going to be a really wealthy business person that comes in and buys Chateau Lafite Rothschild and decides to change the name to, you know, John Henry, Chateau John Henry, because that's his name. These
Right.
things have been around for a long time. And because of the historical context of these names, they have history. And people love the history of these wines. So you don't see anything changing names in France with Bordeaux and Burgundy. But in the United States and in all these up and coming regions of the world, oh, it's happening every single day. People are buying land, they're planting. It takes about 7 years from the time that you get your vineyard site,
Mm-hmm.
you plant your vines, you cultivate the vines, and then you actually produce grapes that are going to make the ripe grape to produce grapes that will enable you to have an entire vintage produced. So about 7 years. When you think about that, that investment for anybody that has a dream of buying a winery or buying land, it's a pretty long investment, and certainly for somebody who is more of a who wants instant gratification, that wouldn't be the type of business to get into. But in Napa, there's all these incredible new vineyards that are popping up. And in order for me to keep up with it, I'm actually relying on my customers to tell me which ones they like, because they're the ones who are jumping on all these new mailing lists. They're the ones who are going to Napa 2 and 3 times a year. And when you actually are the ones that are really into that community, you get to know the new brands real quickly. And the difficulty is when the critics haven't rated something, 98, 99, or 100 points, and yet some very wealthy business person has put a lot of money into a new vineyard site, they have to charge a lot of money to get their money back.
Right.
So you might see wineries out there that are popping up that are charging between $200 and $400 a bottle, and these are these are brand new wineries, and they have no recognition. They have no historical context of scores, and it's amazing that they're going out there and trying to charge this kind of money. You think they're crazy, but usually it's all about marketing, and you get people to taste your wines and you get some scores behind you, and that's what's going to get elevate the brand and the recognition. But I can tell you it's not a very viable business opportunity. Not a lot of them are making it, and certainly with what you have to pay to get top quality Napa vineyards and farmers, it's really not that lucrative of a business as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think the only other option would be to be a raging alcoholic and taste every one of the wines yourself and differentiate, but you'd go broke or lose a liver one way or the other. But
Yeah. Oh, one more thing I want to add
sure.
about that I think will be interesting to people listening is that when people hear about the major wines in Napa, and a lot of them have cult followings to them, like Harlan Estate,
Exactly.
like Abreu, Arajo, Sloan, Screaming Eagle. These are the major names of the brands that we sell, and a lot of these people who have bought these vineyards, the actual money is not even in the wine itself. They might break even on the wine. This is a real estate play. You're buying a half of a mountain site in Napa Valley, which is one of the hottest real estate, areas of the world. And when you think about what's going to happen down the road in 50, 60 years, these sites might be worth 5, 6 times the value. So a lot of the people who are actually owners of these major cult followed brands, they're actually real estate guys more than they are wine guys. They love wine, but the real estate play is much more of the reason why they got into it.
How then do you at least look at planning and marketing out the expansion of your footprint, whether it's on social, whether it's looking at other different types of paid media, things like that? What's sort of the idea for you of how to continue to grow this business, to reach more customers out there, to reach more people and educate them about the wine business, especially in the vertical that you're in today?
Well, one thing that actually occurred to us when COVID hit, and all these restaurateurs who a lot of them, we know them very well. I love food and wine. I travel and I eat at these restaurants. I know a lot of sommeliers, and they're some of the people that refer us clients. And to see these restaurants go out of business, or the ones that have to shut down, and especially the sommeliers who are now looking for jobs. We started actually doing a charitable donation of every order that comes through in our company over $250. We donate $5 to a sommelier fund. And to me, I really think that connecting with the sommeliers of the world, and seeing that a sommelier of 15 years ago was somebody who just knew a lot about wine more than the next person at the restaurant, and they were a server. But now you see these movies like Psalm 1, Psalm 2, and all these people who are actually getting their accredited, their degrees in becoming a sommelier. It's a very sought after thing. And you go to New York, and these Psalms, there's a community there, and they have 50 or 60 people who have master sommelier degrees, and these are all people who love wine, and they know that whatever they do in their life, they're going to be drinking great wine, and they want to be around people who drink great wine. And these are all the young people of the world that who knows what their opportunities are going to be in 15, 20 years. So in part of marketing ourselves, I think that the sommelier community is a huge part of it. And that's obviously one that for me is I can connect to, because I used to be in the restaurant business, so I have a lot of emotional ties to people who are in the restaurant business. When it comes to the IT side of things, I would love to be able to outsource the ability to have somebody who also loves wine, but also is super savvy with IT and marketing from a social media standpoint, and really take this over and do what they need to do to connect us into the right avenues with social media. Because we tried hiring a marketing firm, and the person who was in charge of our social media account knew nothing about wine and nothing about a high-end wine person. And for about 3 weeks of watching our posts on social media, you would have thought that we were the most amateur company in the world. It was embarrassing. So it made me realize that you have to be connected with people that love wine, that just have careers and doing other things that can help you grow your company. So it's what I think is going to be the next step for me, is to really seek out who are the people in those industries that also have a deep passion for wine and understand how to place us into those certain channels or mediums.
Such a great point. So, Jeremy, I ask this of all my guests on a shark's perspective because I'm a shark fanatic, nicknamed Shark. What is your favorite kind of shark and why?
Well, I can tell you I can't stand great whites because I'm petrified, and I can't go in the ocean anymore because of it. I know you like to shark dive, and I probably would never get into a great white tank if you paid me. So it can't be a great white for sure. I would say that it's got to be I've heard the hammerhead sharks actually don't bite, so let's go with a hammerhead.
Well, that was about as true as anything you'd read on the internet. So they do bite, but they're fascinating creatures. So I'll go with that. So, but fair enough. Jeremy, it's that special time of the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
I've been waiting all day.
All right, perfect. Number 1. So you talked a little bit about the French region, where you have a passion for their wines, but let's talk about 2 others. Let me get your favorite. Napa Valley or the Italian wine country wines?
Napa Valley,
Why
for
so?
sure. The Italian wines, in my opinion, are so dry and they're so hit or miss that even if it's a food-driven wine, I think that the voluptuous, the huge fruit bombs of Napa are pretty much all on point, and each vintage that you drink them have a much higher quality to have a great experience than in Italy, which has different, the conditions of the temperatures of each year. They really affect the wines there. So you might have some great vintages, some bad vintages, but Napa does an amazing job of each vintage producing very, very high quality wine. So I got to go with Napa.
Good point. Good point. Number 2. So you're a Burgundy man. I got to ask you a question you may not be prepared for. Anchorman, Ron Burgundy, The Lost Movie, or Anchorman 2, The Legend Continues?
Oh wow! I probably would go with Step Brothers if that was part three
Ooh,
because it's
that's a good one.
so good. But I'd have to go with the first one, the first Anchorman.
Good man. All right, number 3. A bottle of Chateau Lafite, 1869, or a Screaming Eagle Cabernet, 1992?
Is the 1869 Lafite real?
Yes.
Okay, I'd have to go with it if it's real. But the majority of them on the market are probably fake.
Oh, good point. Do you run into that a lot? Are there a lot of brokers out there selling fake wines that you?
A- Absolutely. There's too many out there, and there's a great movie, or I guess you could call it a documentary that was put together called Sour
Yeah.
Grapes.
Oh, yeah.
Every and that was Rudy Kurniawan, who got away with selling over $10 million of fake wine into auction houses where the billionaires of the world all got together and owned these wines, and then later realized that they had been buying these fake wines, and it was a huge deal to wake everybody up in the wine business to say, hey, you need to know who you're buying from, and you also need to get a guarantee of the authenticity of the wine that you're buying. So if you ask me about buying wines that are 100 years old, I just recommend people not to do it. Unless you have so much money, you should expect that either the bottle's going to be bad or you might be drinking something really good that might not even be bought.
Yeah, it's either on Netflix or Amazon Prime. That's where I've seen it. It's on one of them, but it's a really good movie, so a really good documentary.
Hmm.
Number 4, a bottle of red or a bottle of white. I know you said you were a Burgundy region fan, but bottle of red or bottle of white?
I'm drinking white Burgundy all day, any day. And what we say to people is, on a desert island, what's your wine? So you know that for lunch you're going to have it, you know for dinner you're going to have it, and you know if you're an alcoholic and for breakfast if you want to drink, you're going to have it.
Yeah,
For me, it's white Burgundy all day long.
awesome. Number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Biscuits all day.
Good man. All right. So, Jeremy, where do people find out more about you, more about the wine business that you're in, learn, and then reach out to you if they want to buy a bottle of wine, expensive bottle of wine?
Well, we make it very easy. Our website has our contact information right on the home page. Also, with the About Us, you can find my name with my cell phone number right there. I'm an open book, and at grwwine.com, www.grwwine.com, you can find us and actually see all the wine that we have to offer in our portfolio. And then my name and number is right there, and you can call us or call anybody on our sales team, and we are going to give you white glove treatment.
Awesome. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Thank you so much. That was fun.
So there was my conversation with Jeremy Ringel, a managing partner at GRW Wines, and he's worked with wine collectors brokering high-end wines for over 30 years. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with him. First, find a niche problem and develop a solution. This is someone who really knows his audience and their tastes, and he found a niche to develop, satisfying that audience. Wish more people would focus on that. And as he said, he's a customer. They drink the wines they sell. And I could not have enjoyed this point more when I asked him how he put his own stamp of approval on a high-end bottle of wine. After all, he's a bit of an expert in his field, but he's not a winemaker. It's simply focused on understanding what your customers want. He is an expert at knowing what his customers want. It's one thing to keep up with your own taste buds, but then you really need to focus on your customers' actual tastes. Second, we spoke about social media, and this was such a good call out. A lot of industries struggle with having the right kind of social media team and content to support them because they don't truly understand the industry very well. So a lot of content looks vanilla. It looks more fluff than niched and nuanced. Whether you're an agency, consultant, or third party managing social for someone, may have won a bunch of awards, for example, or they may get a lot of likes and shares and all those kind of metrics. But the end customer of the customer doesn't care about any of that. They're often just looking, and I'll air quote again, looking for a solution to a problem. Think about any brand you love and their content on social. Is it too vanilla, when in this case it should be a deep rosé? I mean, just remember, when supporting any company's social or content, to dive much deeper into the industry of the brand, rather than just on how to get more likes on Instagram or any other social media platform. Third, I just always enjoy the reminder and comparison with Amazon. One of the things that makes him much better in his own marketing success simply boils down to how to get his products in a certain way to clients all over the world. After all, you're not just putting a stamp on a bottle of wine and dropping it in a big blue box or running it off to UPS and putting some bubble wrap over it. Whether it's individual state regulations or shipping to China, it's a big part of fulfilling a commitment to customers, understanding logistics. Think about how much Amazon is often revered for so many things. One of the biggest reasons they get all that love for all of the stuff that they do, especially in marketing, is they figured out how to get worthless merchandise we all want in 2 days or less at your door. And they're pretty dependable. So don't discount the logistics piece, whatever kind of marketer you are. We can dress up a product or service all day long, package it up really well as have the most incredible e-commerce page on the planet with thousands of likes and shares on a social post about it. But if the product or service doesn't get to the customer when they expected it, or better yet, when you promised it, then a lot of that great experience goes down the drain. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. So go have a glass on me, maybe two, but drink responsibly and never drink and drive. Join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.